Hi there, I'm Rina, and welcome to the Lessons from Post-Exit Entrepreneurs, the podcast where you'll get the rundown from entrepreneurs' collective insights in exiting their businesses, learn from their post-exit challenges, be inspired by their journeys and their rediscovery in the pursuit of a purposeful life. This week, our guest is Alvin Poh. He sold his business for $30 million when he was 33 years old. He had built this business with his partner from $0 to becoming Singapore's #1 web hosting provider with 45,000 clients and a team of 150. He is now a business coach and helps business owners scale up their businesses. He shares with us his post-exit emotions and journey in rediscovering himself and his life's purpose. Here to tell us the story is Alvin Poh.
Such a pleasure having you. Thank you so much, Alvin, for making time.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. Okay, so how did you find your buyer for your business?
I didn't find the buyer found us. So at that point of time, Vodafone was the largest hosting provider in Singapore. So one of the things that definitely helps is being the market leader, and then that attracts attention. So the buyer that eventually acquired us, that wasn't the first buyer that came along. There were a lot of interested buyers.
During the same period of time or over?
Probably started since maybe about 2014, 2015. And Singapore at that point of time, before COVID, was a MICE hub. Right? Everything happened in Singapore. There would be like conferences, exhibitions, events, all the time. So every quarter, there'll be something big going on, whether it's an industry kind of like conference or something specific to like say the internet or cloud computing or something like that. And we'll get so many people just approaching us. People
Wow.
just randomly emailing or contacting us and asking to meet up, right?
Wow. So that's almost like getting a new business every other day. It's like a potential acquirer every other day.
Well, yeah, all these people are interested. So, I mean, interest is one thing, right? But like whether or not you can come together to a deal is another. And with a lot of these people, I guess it wasn't very aligned with what we wanted to do. We got a lot of interest from people that were, for example, staying in a market that's very, very different from us, right? Their companies, their businesses were maybe in Europe, for example. And they just want to see what was happening in Asia. So there wasn't any real plan. Otherwise, there were a lot of funds as well in private equity and all
VCs
that. And they were like just looking to acquire companies. And the way they look at companies was, it being a financial asset more than
They are not really interested in the business per se, right?
And for my co-founder and I, it was really making sure that the business continued, because there was a real sense of responsibility that we had. The people, the customers that we served, and the team that we had, I think we owed it to all these people, right, to make sure that we delivered like great service to all of them. So,
and not just take a big sum of money and just leave.
That was the last thing that we wanted. So we weren't interested in any of the deals that came along until our acquirer came by, and it was interesting because they were very, very similar to us. They were also an operator. They were so the brand that was their holding company was Dreamscape.
I remember that. Yeah.
And the operating brand that they had was Crazy Domains. Crazy Domains is
Crazy Domains,
the largest hosting and domain name operator in Australia. And when they came along, it just made sense, right? They started from nothing, grew their business, and became the market leader there, and had a very similar journey with us, right? Except they were in Australia and we were in Singapore. And it was quite funny because like even our offices in the Philippines was literally the buildings next to each other. We could literally see each other's like buildings, and a lot of our team and their team already knew each other before that, and it was like, wow.
It seems to make sense already. Like
Okay.
So
we decided to go ahead with them. In in 2017.
When all these acquirers were approaching you guys, but I guess it was over some years, right? What were you guys' mindset? Were you all ready to sell already? Or you're more like, I'm open to have this conversation, but I still want to grow this business by myself?
So that's why we still continue having the conversations. It was great to see what people were doing and how the market valued and viewed us. But we always had this very clear vision in mind, and that was just growing the business, making sure that we kept our heads down and focus on what mattered, which was making sure that our customers were well taken care of, our team was growing, business was stable. So that was all that we cared about. So it wasn't really looking for an exit. I think we never really entertained that. So we weren't chasing or we weren't desperate for somebody to come by and buy us.
So on that note, right, when this acquirer came along, you felt it was the right fit. I remember you shared something about their initial offer was a lot lower than what you felt you were worth, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, but since now you were saying that you guys were like, well, if they buy, they buy. If they don't buy, they don't buy. Was there at any point when the conversation got more serious and you realized that the value that they wanted to offer was not very much? Were you scared that they would drop the deal suddenly? Or?
No, I think we came from a position where we didn't really want the deal in the first place. I mean, if it was there and at the right price, with the right people, then great. But if not, we had all these plans that we wanted to execute on. We were expanding, we were growing, and so if a deal were to happen, I think it was something that was a bonus more so than anything. And that was how we valued the value of the company, right? We weren't looking at anything more than, say, just looking at the future and looking at how much more do we want to grow this business to, and how long do we want to continue to be in this business. And so we looked at it and we came to a number which was 10 times PE, price to earning ratio. And that was something that we felt was comfortable because these guys came in with a PE ratio of 3. And a PE ratio of 3 basically means that they are going to pay you like 3 years worth of profits at the point of acquisition. And in our minds, we were just thinking, but if we kept the business and kept it growing for another 3 more years, not only would we still have the business, but we would still be able to, probably sell it for a higher price at that point of time. So, 3 was just something that we absolutely couldn't consider. So that was how it went down.
Okay. So when you guys eventually sold the business, was there a point, I think I asked you this before, like when it suddenly sunk in that, wow, I really sold this company already. And you started it since you were 17, right?
Yeah, it was a long journey. I was a teenager, so I was 17 years old when I started the business together with my co-founder. And then just grew it over the years. Never thinking of an exit, per se. So, wow. I remember when I first got the deposit amount.
See a huge sum of money.
I had a POSB account and that was insane.
How many zeros?
That was insane. I was like, we never saw so much at one point reflected before.
And not in your company bank account, but in your personal bank account too.
Exactly. That was insane to me. That was just wow. But the funny thing was, life just continued as per normal. Like the completion happened in July, and I remember the next day, my co-founder and I were just like talking about it, and literally that's what we did. We went back to work. Of course, there were like all these projects that we wanted to handle, and when the deal happened, we wanted it to be more like a merger than acquisition. Like we wanted to merge together because we felt like there were similarities and an alignment with the acquirer and their plans. So Southeast Asia was something that both of us wanted to expand into. It just made sense, right? So we needed all these projects, all these plans to be in place. We were working on our infrastructure, our products, all our processes. Everything was per usual, right? Yeah, that was what happened after acquisition. People always think or ask me if there was like something big that happened. And honestly, it was life.
It's like another day.
It was just like another day.
Yeah. So talking about like having such a huge sum of money, there are some people who feel like if I have $1 million or I have $10 million, I'll be happy, I'll be fulfilled, and you know I could retire and be happy, right? Was that the case for you? I mean, you are someone who have been there, done that, and even more than those amounts that I was talking about.
Yeah. So I think it's really important to have the end goal in mind. And the reason why that is the case is because if not, then you're just going to get distracted, right? And you start fixating on the supposed goal, which is money. But money is never the end goal. Money is just a byproduct or an outcome, not the goal. And my goal was clear. Like, I wanted to grow the business. Sure, right? When I first started, I needed to make sure that financially I'm taken care of, my family is taken care of, and all that. So there's that stability that I was looking for. But after you get to a certain point, you're really looking at increasing the impact that you're creating. One of the problems of businesses is that the bigger you grow, the more problems happen, right? Whether it's in terms of your team, your processes, your market, like external market forces. There are all these like variables that you need to handle, and it's tough. So you have to make sure that you know what direction, what vision you're going towards, so that when all these things come along your way, including say a sudden windfall, you don't get sidetracked or you don't get distracted. So I guess that kept me grounded, and even after the funds came in, even after the exit, I was still focused on really growing the business because that was what I wanted to do.
And how long did you stay on in the business before you kind of completed was there an earn-out or handover before you
we're very
truly
proud
exited?
That we had no earn-out. The business was very systemized. We want to make sure that everything was systemized, both in terms of people and processes. So we had a very strong middle management layer. We had very strong processes supporting that team. And so the business was ready for a buyer to come in and
Fantastic.
Just take over
I love
what
that.
we were doing. Right? And that was the goal. So while we didn't want to exit, we did want to have a systemized business. And that was the one thing that I was focused on. Because I don't like having problems on my plate all the time. I mean, problems are fine if it's new and happening once, right? I don't want problems to happen again and again and having me like take a look and handle all of that all the time. So that was the one thing that we were extremely focused on, and creating that systemized business allowed us to have no earn-out. So I thought that was the one of the proudest things that we did.
And then when you eventually exited the business fully, what was it like shifting from today you have to go to office, and tomorrow when you wake up, suddenly you don't have anywhere you need to be?
Man, the first day was glorious.
Yeah.
It was glorious.
I feel you, man.
So as a CEO, a business owner, and entrepreneur, I think there's this like very wrong perception that it's all rosy and everything's like fantastic and you don't need to do any work. For me, I see entrepreneurship and running a business as a position of responsibility. Not prestige or not any other form, right? And so for many years, and all the while when I was growing the business, it was just the two of us, my co-founder and myself, to like growing a team and handling all these customers, and so there was this like sense of responsibility throughout, and the responsibility didn't diminish or drop. It actually increased.
Because now there's like
more customers, more team members, more processes, more offices, more of everything, right? So the responsibility only increases as you see more and more success with your business. And so I remember the day that I
no longer had this responsibility.
Right? That was one of the most glorious days because I was like, I have absolutely nothing to
do, nowhere to be.
That was great. So I remember that was the first, I think, feeling that I really got when I officially left the company completely. That happened in July, 1 year after I completed the deal. So July of 2018.
And after that, you shared about an existential crisis, right? Tell us a bit about that. You bought a Lamborghini and
I bought a Lamborghini actually when I was still
before you
business.
fully exited. Okay.
So I think that was one of those midlife crises. That I can go into also. But I guess the existential crisis came about because, like I said, there was this sense of identity and sense of responsibility for many years.
I can only imagine.
And suddenly it was gone.
Yeah.
Right. It wasn't so much as having to go to the office. It was more of like what are you responsible for? What do you need to drive and handle and take care of? And suddenly there was none of that.
Yeah.
My identity for the last 17 years at that point of time was that of an entrepreneur. Right.
Yeah.
I was a business owner. I was running Golden, and that was my identity. And suddenly I was not.
Yeah.
So it was a very strange feeling to be in. And I guess that contributed to the existential crisis. So it took me a few weeks before I was like trying to really figure out what I wanted to do next. And at one point in time, I just said, there's really nothing much holding me back in Singapore anymore. And one of the things that I really wanted to do was to really travel, and not travel for like 2 or 3 weeks, but like travel for a really long, extended long period of time. And I realized that I could. So in December of 2018, I left in July of 2018, and in December of 2018, that was when my target date was, because my apartment lease was ending in December. So I spent like 2 to 3 months just getting rid of everything I had. Everything, like so much so that all my life possessions could just fit into 2 duffel bags.
Amazing.
So I left one at my parents' place, and I took one, and in December of 2018, I just started traveling full time.
Snowboarding.
Yeah.
And then I went with you.
Yeah.
We met there a couple of times.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah, those were fun times. Yeah. So, I think a lot of post-exit entrepreneurs would resonate with what you said. With a couple of friends that I've spoken to as well. So could you share with us a bit of, what was that journey like for you? Having to rediscover your identity again from, you were the most important person in the room to there's nobody you had to be responsible for at that time, right? And how did you, what was that journey and process like, re-evaluating what's your life's purpose and your life's goals?
So I realized also that a lot of my growth, ever since I was a young kid, right, like, since I was like 5 or 6 years old, a lot of that growth came from a change of environment. And this is in line with like what the popular saying goes, right? Like, you're the average of your 5 closest friends. And I think this was something that I also put onto my social media also, because I found that every single time I changed my environment, I could also change my friends. Right? This, for example, like when you were from, say, primary school and then you went on to a secondary school, you don't really have the same group of friends, right? And then from secondary school to go on to like polytechnic or JC, again, the friends change, right? And in those changes lies an opportunity for you to shed attributes and traits that you didn't like and take on new attributes and traits that you wanted to have.
That's a very interesting mindset, okay?
And I realized that because when I was young, when I was in primary school, when I first got to primary school, I was a very, very, very shy kid. Very, very shy. I didn't even dare buy candy from the auntie at the mama shop.
Oh, so cute.
Because like I really wanted candy, but I was like really, really shy of the auntie, and I was like, let's go back
never
home.
mind.
Yeah, I really, really wanted it. I would probably just ask my grandmother, my mother to buy
help
it
you.
for me, right? So I was that shy. And so as a shy kid, when I went to primary school, the people that I hung out with were the shy kids, right? Yeah, I wouldn't be hanging out with the outgoing, bold kids or the mischievous kids. I was just with the shy kids. Now that's a classic example of what I was talking about. Because as a shy kid hanging around with other shy kids, if you wanted to be somebody different, if you wanted to say, oh man, I don't like being shy anymore, I should be more outgoing, your friends wouldn't support that.
Yeah. Because they're like, why do you need to do that?
Exactly, and they're not malicious.
We're happy the way we are.
Sometimes at least, they're not malicious. Sometimes just because that's the identity that everybody possesses, right? And so if you perform something that's different, if you act in a way that's different from the group, then people are not maliciously saying, why are you doing that? But sometimes they don't understand.
They don't understand.
Sometimes they feel like, it's not you, why are you being so different? And all these little cues and behaviors basically make you doubt yourself, and you don't have that kind of support to grow, become who somebody else that you want to be, right? And that was my experience. So in 2018, I thought that traveling full time would be great because one of the things that it allowed me to do was to have personal space. Space to become somebody that I wasn't, somebody that I wanted to be, and give me space also to think about the things that I wanted to do. And that was the clarity that I got when I was like traveling, because I was no longer with the same group of friends that will always be here in Singapore. I was no longer with the same routines or habits or familiar places or familiar environments. I could be somebody completely different.
And nobody knew who you were because you are wherever, you know, you are, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So yeah, that was the cool thing. You could be anybody you want. You could suddenly be the Joker and like, you know, in a new group of friends, just be like somebody completely different.
Yeah.
You could be shy and withdrawn, and nobody will question you.
Yeah.
They'll be like, they will just assume that
that's who you are. Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah. So I found it to be very valuable. It was invaluable for me to really like kind of discover myself a bit more and to really understand what makes Alvin tick. What drives Alvin. So.
And then how did you, I mean, through that process, did you discover and find a new, how did you go about doing that, if you could elaborate?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think in the past, because of this construct that I was in, right? You know, you hear and do and see a lot of things. How you should act and behave, you know, even like say in your family, in your friends, and even in business, right? The Lambo was one great example, right? Because you know, everybody was like,
I love that story, by the way.
Yeah, man, that's
so classic.
But you know, I have to admit that one of the reasons why I bought a Lambo was because it was the thing to do. It was like, you know, oh, status, you know, you made it because you have a Lamborghini. And I was like, oh, okay, I should do that, right? Because that seems to be the construct. And when I did that, I realized a lot of things. I realized I didn't feel happy about owning a Lambo. I mean, it was cool, but am I really happy? I didn't think so. I wasn't. And so a lot of these things started to be questions that were just nagging at me. And I think one of the things that I discovered was really understanding what my preferences are, like what I would gravitate towards, what I didn't like, what I didn't care about. And that became clearer and clearer. One of the things that I became also was a minimalist. Because I sold everything and I really didn't own anything. And when you're traveling full time around the world, the best thing that you can have is actually no luggage. So the less you have, the better. And after doing that for several weeks and months, you realize how little value a lot of the things that we assume to be valuable are really
not so important.
Right? In fact, they hold you back and they, you know, add this burden to you. So at the end of the day, I realized, oh wow, there's so little, there's such a difference between like what society typically said was like, oh, this is status and importance. And at the end of the day, when it really mattered, what truly was valuable and important. So I realized that was when material things just didn't matter to me anymore. I didn't care about them. I started realizing also the stuff that brought me joy. Things that I'll say like yes to, and things that I was just like, oh, I don't like doing it, and I probably shouldn't do any of that anymore. Again, you know, based on like growing up and all that, you always have all these input from different people, right? You're thinking, oh, you have to go networking, you have to go to parties, you have to do this. But at the end of the day, you know, I sometimes don't really care about all these things that much. So that gave me a lot more perspective and a lot more grounding as to who I am and helped me shape my journey from then till now. At least.
Finding out who Alvin is beyond just an entrepreneur, right?
I was always very perplexed by this question that my friends around or my peers will ask me, and they ask me like, hey, so what kind of hobbies do you have, and what kind of hobbies do you have outside of work?
And you didn't.
I had zero answer. I couldn't answer the question at all. I mean, I had things that I was dabbling in, but I wouldn't say it was like a hobby. I mean, I have friends who like love soccer, they love like badminton, they love chess, leather crafting or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And they love it. They spend so much time on it. You know, there's always this process of growth and experimentation and discovery for them, and I didn't have that. Like, I had nothing that I would like.
Yeah, there wasn't something you were passionate about
Yeah.
before you traveled,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was quite eye-opening to me, to get that question. And so that was one of the things that I was like also, you know, discovering and figuring out about myself. Yeah.
That's beautiful though. Like you finally could figure out who Alvin is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know you spoke about the 4 types of freedom. I listened to you. Yeah. So when you were traveling, obviously you had all 4 types of freedom, right? So maybe for the listeners who are not aware, it was time. You could be anywhere that you wanted to be. Location, anywhere you want to be. Financial freedom, and what was the last one?
Mind space.
Mind space, because you have no responsibility, right?
Yeah.
So what would stop you from, you know, just continuing this, having these 4 types of freedom and continue to travel and just, I mean, with that amount of money, you could put it in investments and all that, you could just live off your passive income for the rest of your life, right?
Yeah.
And obviously now you are, you know, doing something else also. You're helping other business owners and everything. Why do you feel there is a deeper desire to be more than just retiring happy?
That is great also because I realized there's a difference between the things that we are searching for as people. Typically, there are 2. I'll tell you about the one thing that people always seem to be gravitating towards, right? And people always they are looking at success.
Yeah.
Right, you know, as a business owner, you know, I look at business success.
Yeah.
As anybody in their career will probably look at some form of success, right? And by and large, success in today's society is always seen as like financial success. And then the rest are good to have, but it's foremost and center financial success.
Yeah.
But I realized that, you know, it's not success that gives us meaning and purpose. It's significance. Success, it's always individual. It's always what you want, what, you know, you desire. It's you. Significance, it's about others. Like, how do we do something, create something that is of value to other people and that helps other people? When you can actually do that, you've gotten significance. And I think that's the difference between the two that, you know, kind of eludes people. And when they get too focused on success, I think they might not have as much significance, or they probably maybe ignore significance. And at the end of the day, you know, you're just gonna feel lost and aimless, because that was what I felt.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I had financial freedom. I had all the freedoms that you said that was there, but to what end?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, when I was traveling, the first few months were great, but after that, I just felt so aimless and without purpose.
Yeah.
Even though I was doing things that I thought were fun and all that.
And they were definitely fun for a while, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's tremendously important to find significance, to find reason, the purpose that drives us. And so that's why I went back to entrepreneurship, because I realized that there were just 2 main things that shaped me into who I am today. And it was, of course, entrepreneurship, because, you know, creating a business, running a business, growing that business helped me become the entrepreneur that I am, and it really changed my life, my family's life, and that was incredible. And so I want to give to others, you know, the kind of opportunities that I got, and show them the stuff, the mistakes, the learnings, the lessons that I went through, right? And that was the whole reason behind super scaling. And then there's also education. And education, I think, is important as well, at least for me, because it opened doors that I never got as a young kid. You know, my family wasn't well-to-do, so my social circles were really small. It was the people that I knew as my family, there was my neighborhood friends, and then there was my school friends. But when you look at the whole world, or even the whole country, that's such a small fraction. And I remember education being like one of the big, like, eye-opening events, because I went to Temasek Poly, I went to Singapore Management University, and in these institutions, I met and got to know and got to learn from so many people. And people always ask me, is there a point to getting a degree or a diploma? I don't think the point is as much the certificate as the process that you're going through to get there. Because the people, the opportunities, the learnings, the different perspectives that I got in that journey were just incredible. And I thought that was something that was crucial also as my personal journey. So that's again another area that I want to give to others, that I got opportunities in. That's why I created that scholarship and donated $250,000 to Singapore Management University to create that scholarship and to give scholarships every year in perpetuity. So those looking at all the possible areas that we can actually help and give back
and contribute.
Those two are the biggest areas that I want to focus on.
I love that, because it's we are not made to be insular, right? And we are made for community. And having you share with us how, having reached that pinnacle level of success in the world sense of having that financial wealth, is not the answer to a meaningful life for you, right? It's about community. It's about contributing to people around you, and helping others maybe even reach where you are at one day.
Exactly. I think that's crucial. That's the reason why there's so many people that have like midlife crises.
Right.
They're doing well financially, but you just start wondering like, what's the whole point?
What's the point in this? If you just chase, today it could be 30 million, tomorrow it could be 300 million. It will never end, right?
And so my life is actually really simple. Relatively speaking, I don't have I don't have the fancy cars, I don't have the fancy watches. I have an Apple Watch, but it's expensive, but I think it's like
functional,
extravagant. No cars. I have a motorcycle. I have a decent apartment, I think, but it's not like luxurious. And I think I just make sure that my focus goes towards the things that I'm building, the businesses, the people that I'm impacting, the reason why I'm around, and making sure that whatever I'm doing aligns towards that purpose that drives me. And I think that's crucial.
And I guess my last question would be, if you were to sum it up in a sentence, what does it mean for you to lead a meaningful and fulfilling life?
I love this because this is the same approach that I take to coaching my clients also, whether they are like students or entrepreneurs, because a lot of times what needs to be defined is not really the question that we think should be asked, but really the root cause. And that is discovered through being intentional about things. Intention basically is a mindset that starts with the end in mind. Like questioning whether or not you're doing whatever you're doing, is that really bringing you closer, or just keeping you busy? Because at the end state, you just want to get from A to B. So the clarity that we have, how we get to B, comes from two things. One is knowing what B is, and two, knowing that whatever we're doing today, whether that actually leads us towards that. So I think being intentional is one of the most important things that we need to do. That would be my one piece of advice.
All right. Thank you very much. It was such a pleasure speaking with you. Thanks for your time once again.
Yeah, it was fun.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please consider hitting subscribe or follow on whichever platform you are listening from. If you want to support this podcast, please share this podcast with anyone you think will find this useful, or leave a rating and review on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or like and comment on YouTube. I would also love to hear from you. Do let me know what are some of your key takeaways from this episode, and any feedback or suggestions you may have. I look forward to learning and growing with you through this podcast. I'm Rina, and I'll talk to you on the next episode.